morning to all. In today's session, you're all going to learn the principles of microeconomics, an introduction to microeconomics, what is all about, what is the exact scope and its nature, as well as the demand analysis. So let's begin. Introduction to economics. Economics is a study of how the society or how the people use its limited resources. It's not only deals with all about money, it also deals with the finance and wealth, which is the most important interrelation between these two terms. Economics is the study of the production, consumption, distributions of goods and services. And that's why all these flow of activities is a source of income where where the people or the society could earn the income and spend money, and that's all about economics. And the father of the economics is Adam Smith, who is already defined the term economics in a very normal sense, or in a in a very simple words, I could say. It is a study of a nature and how the people or the society uses the national wealth, and that's all about economics. So economics is also deals with the four factors of the production, that is land, labor, capital, as well as the enterprise, and another fifth factor, that is also technology. So, wealth cannot be an ultimate goal of any organization or any man or any common man would say. He or she has to, or the society or organization has to work hard to keep their daily needs or to make their life more comfort and earn money according to achieve something to get a life better. So automatically, money or wealth is not an ultimate objective of any common man. So it always being the want to buy all the necessary goods and services that makes life more comfortable, and that's the main purpose. That's the main intention of a common man because everybody needs money. So, according to the Dr. Alfred Marshall, which is one of the most great economists of the 19th century, he has also defined the term economics in a very normal words. So, economics is a study of a men actions, that what the men do or what he planning to do or willing to do in an ordinary business of life to take a proper decision for its own purpose or to achieve a major objectives of his own life. It also inquiries how he get his income and how he uses from multiple or alternate sources. So it is on the one side, you could say it is a study of wealth. It is also the another side, the most important. It is also a study of a common man. So as I already told, that it's not all about the money. It's all about the common man or a society or a people, that how they uses and how they use their limited resources, how they earn the you can see income, how they spend the money. So that's all about economics. So another professor, Lionel Robbins, has also defined economics, which is a science which studies a human behavior as a relationship between the ants. Ants is a human bonds, that every human being has unlimited bonds. It never ends. And of course, the scare means which has a limited resources, which have a multiple uses, and that's called economics is a science. So economics is a science which already denotes a study of human behavior as a relationship between the you can see the unlimited human wants and the limited resources which have alternative uses to achieve its own objectives. That's called economics is a science. But economics is also a social science which also deals with the production, consumption, and the distribution of goods and services. Economics is also an arts which also an arts that deals with the creativity, that deals with the arts work, creation of the arts work, the literature, the and the cultural products as well, and that's called economics is also a art. The silent features of economics, according to the Professor Robbins, which has four categorized into 4 points, that is, the human being has unlimited wants, resources are limited, and that limited resources has an ultimate alternative uses, and how the society use such limited resources which have an alternative uses. That is the most challenging you can say task of a common man, and of course and accordingly the choices that whether how the income is to be earned and how they spend money into the various parameters, and that's called about the choice. Economics is classified into two branches, that is the microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics deals with the study of an individual consumer, an individual firm, an individual company, and that's called microeconomics. So microeconomics refers to a study of an individual consumer or a firm is called microeconomics. In other words, it is also called the theory of firm. So micro means the 1 millionth, that is deals with the behavior and the problems of a single individual and of a micro organization. When it comes to the macro will it considers as a study of an aggregate, or you can say the words a total level of economic activity of a country, that's called microeconomics. So macroeconomics deals with the it's an aggregate study of you can say of a you can income of a country, which calls the national income of a country. It also refers to the flow of the resources or the factors of production, which is land, labor, capital, technology, as well as the enterprise or organization, that how they you can say use that particular resources to the business firm, and how the business firm uses such resources and reach to the households, and that's called the microeconomics. We come to the next concept, that is management, which is a part or interrelate to the economics, that how the economics and management are interrelate to each other. That is, the management is an art of getting the things done through the people in a very organized manner, and it is very important for an organization to manage to well manage, so that they can achieve a well recognized goals or objectives, and of course through achieving the goals and objective, or in order to achieve the goals and objective, it includes the number of functions through which the objectives can be achieved, that is planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and controlling. So these are the four main functions of the management. The manager will always get the things done through people in an organization. He's the one of the most efficient resource of an organization, who always tell the people that how you work and in what ways you can work in an organization. He also directs the resources such as man, material, machines, money, and technology. He's also responsible for achieving whatever the target results which has been allotted by the organization, and the main objective of manager is to maximize the profits of the firm. When it comes to the financial manager or the finance manager, it's not only all about to maximize the profit, it's also all about to maximize the wealth of the organization. Next concept we come to the manageable economics. According to the Spencer and Singleman, the manageable economics, it is an integration. It's a combination of the theory which turned into a business practice for the purpose to take up of you can say the find proper decision making and a forward planning by the help of the management. or by the help of a management team. So that's called the manageable economics. It is a process to integrate the economic theories into the practices, into a business practices for the purpose of for facilitating a decision making and forward planning by the management or management team. So let's come to the nature of manageable economics. It is a, you can say manageable economics is a youngest of all the social sciences. It is definitely, that is also true fact, that is originate from economics, which has a common, or you can say basic features of economics, and assuming that all other things is remaining the same. Like we talk about income, you can see the supply, and everything will remains the same in the manageable economics as well. So it is also based on the assumption that the firm and the buyer act as a rational manner, which is nothing has been happened. So the buyer is carried out by the advertisements, the brand loyalties, incentives, and so on. And that's the main, you can see the nature of the manageable economics. And everything will be done by a common man through the help of the organizations and the companies. And the consumer should behave as a rational, which is not a realistic assumption, because it could be changed anytime according to the time period, or you can say a point of time. So that is the one of the assumption, that the consumer should be rational in case of manageable economics, but it could not be a realistic assumption. And that is the main disadvantage of the manageable economics. This is because the behavior of a firm and consumer is always keep on changing, and of course that is the complex phenomenon. That's called the manageable economics. Let's talk about the other features of manageable economics, which has been given on the screen, that is close to microeconomics. Manageable economics is also related to the microeconomics, and also very close relation to the microeconomics. It also operates against the backdrop of macroeconomics. So whatever the flows or flaws are related to the macroeconomics, so definitely manageable economics always operate and you can see improve the condition in case of the macroeconomics. Normative statements is always being used to testify, you can say you to test or to evaluate something facts, but it's not based on generalizing the facts actually. And that is, it is always, it also deals with the ethical statements, which is always used in terms of research, that is the ethical consideration, and that's called the normative statements. So normative statements are those statements which deals to testify, which deals not to generalize the facts, and that's called normative statements. The prescriptive actions, or whatever the actions being taken by the organization or related to the individual companies or related to the individual organizations. So accordingly, the actions would be taken, which is already been pre decided, and accordingly, the action and the solutions which will be considered. It applied in nature. That we can say manageable economics is always believe in the realistic in nature, and that's the main reason that accordingly it also deals with the production, consumption, and the distributions of the goods and services. It also offers to scope to evaluate each alternative. So whatever the solutions of social issues, or whatever the solution of a common issues of a man. So this economics, the manageable economics, also offers us a platform to evaluate each solution or each alternatives which is being faced by a common man. Interdisciplinary, it is a body to study of a two or more, you can say field, or to study a two or more of a knowledge or different specializations, and that's called the interdisciplinary. Let's talk about one of the most important feature of manageable economics, that is assumptions and limitation. This is a true fact that manageable economics is based on the most important assumption, that is the consumer should be a rational, but it is very difficult to assume such assumption or to use such assumption, because consumer reaction and expectations will always be changed according to the time, and that's one of the most important limitation of the same. Let's talk about the scope of manageable economics. The main focus of such economic is to find out the optimal solution to a given problems. And the problems could be related to the production, could relate to the cost, could relate to control of cost, could relate to determine the price of a given product or service, whether to buy and make a decisions, whether it's relate to the inventory decisions or the stock decision, whether how to manage the capital of the organization, how to plan the profit, and how the organization manage that profit in a very different manners. So, and of course, it's also related to the investment decisions, whether the investment being done on the different projects, the decision the organization has to, whether it's profitable or not, and that's all the problems which have the solution and can be solved by the help of the manageable economics. So basically, it categorized into three parameters. The first parameter is concepts and the techniques of the manageable economics, that we can talk about the economic models, we can talk about the marginal equilibrium, we can talk about the market equilibrium, we can talk about the consumer equilibrium. So that is the core, the concept and techniques of manageable economics, which applied to the different decision areas or the problem areas which has been mentioned or relate to the production, cost, price, buy and make decision, stock, capital, profit, investment. So these are the decision areas where such techniques will be applied. Why could be applied? Because to get the optimum solution of a given manageable problem of the organization. And that's called the scope of the manageable economics. So before you apply the manageable economics, you need to find out the first of all the issues, the problems where such economics could be applied to reach up the optimum solution. The next one is main areas of manageable economics. So these are the main areas. The first one is demand decision, input and output decision, price output decision, profit related decision, investment decision, and economic forecasting and forward planning. So when we talk about demand decisions, so basically the organizations think about the different varieties of the products, different types of the product, whether it could be the substitute, complementary, and according the demand types of the demand, whether it should be autonomous, whether it should be drive demand, whether it should be the you can say perishable demand. So all that factors will be considered, and accordingly the decisions to be taken according to the demand factor. The next one is input and output decisions. So it depends upon the resources, that whether the resources or the raw materials could be available on time within the organization. Accordingly, the output would be the decision related to the output will be depend upon the inputs and the quality of the inputs. That will be you can say decisions could be taken with the help of the manageable economics. Price and output decisions. So whatever the decision of the price, and based on the price, really the output would be easily you can say achievable, and that decisions would be taken through this manageable economics. Profit related decisions, so whether that how the profit could be earned, in what ways the profit could be earned by the organization, such type of decisions could be taken through through such type of economics. Investment decisions, and of course it depends upon the projects. then which whether it would be small project, it would be large projects, and accordingly the investment decisions could be taken. So it's not about the profits, it's not about the investments, it's all about the different factors which need to be considered, whether the project would be the environment of the project, whether the duration of the project, all these factors will be considered, and accordingly the investment decision could be taken off. The next one is economic forecasting, that how we assume, how we make an assumptions related to the economic factors where the money has a major role in that, and how such forecasting will forward and turn into the planning for the to achieve the desired targets of the organization. So these are the major areas where problems will always be there and solution will be, you can say, gathered according to the collected according to the manageable economics. Next, we talk about the leakages with other disciplines. So these are the, you can say, the various categories where the manageable economics is always include in that, and of course can be utilized, because in every parameters and every specialized different specializations, the problems and the issues have always been involved. But how to get the optimum solution, how to get the desired solution, will be get through the manageable economics, whether it's related to economics and manageable economics, whether it's related to operation research, where we always talk about the statistical tools, where the problems will be solved using the statistical tools, where and accordingly the possible solution or optimal solution will be get through such economics, mathematics as well, statistics, accountancy, psychology, as economics is also a study of a human behavior, which always have a positive relationship between the unlimited wants and the limited resources which have an alternative uses, and that is called the manageable economics is also be a part of the psychology. Organizational behavior is also being related to the manageable economics, because it always a study of a consumer's perceptions, awareness, knowledge, and many more parameters. And that's the main reason that all these disciplines is also linked to manageable economics, because every discipline has an issues, and the issues could be solved by the manageable economics only to get the results, better results. Let's talk about the demand analysis. What is demand? What are the various types of the demand? How the demand could be achieved? What are the elasticity of demand? That is all about in detail. That is all about demand analysis. So let's talk about what is demand. What is demand? Demand basically deals with is a study of what the consumer is willing and ability to pay. That's called demand. So, for example, I have a car, and you can say I need to buy a new car. And if I have a willingness to pay, an ability to pay, that's called demand, because that's my demand. That is an individual demand. So, definitely, economics belongs to four factors, that is consumption, production, exchange, and distribution. Consumption is always being deals with the behavior of the consumer, how they operate, how they use their funds for the production, and that's the reason that consumption is always precede the production. So once this process will go on, after that, an exchange deals with how the goods once produced are sold for a price to the customer. So it's an exchange of goods for a money. In simple words, I could say. Distribution deals with how the sales proceed of the goods sold and how they distribute among the various factors of the production. That is, the towards the rent, the landlord letting the land, wages for labor, interest to the capitalist, or you can say of having provided the capital, and the profits the organizer of having organized that business activity. So every parameters have some objectives. If we talk about the land, so obviously the owner or the landlord definitely let out his land for what? For rent, and that is a part of economics. We talk about wages, getting the paid wages to the labor. It's a part of economics. Interest paid to capitalist. Why? Why? Because it's provide capital. Profits is an organization how the business activity to be carried out. Carried out. That's called profits. So this is the four major, you can say, scope of economics which has been categorized here. Let's talk about the demand. So, every want supported by the consumer or individual willingness and ability to buy, and that's called demand for that particular product and service. So, if I want a car and I cannot pay for it, it's not demand. So, if I want to buy an ice cream and I can pay for it, and that's called a demand for an individual side, for an individual, you can say, a person. So any product and service said to have demand, only the three conditions to be satisfied. If these three condition has been satisfied, that exactly called demand. Otherwise, there is no demand. So a desire on the part of the buyer to buy. If I have a natural desire to buy a car, that's called demand. If I have a natural desire to buy a car and I have a willingness to pay for it, it's demand. If I'm able to pay for a specified price to buy a car, that's called demand. So if I satisfy these three conditions, that's called a demand for a car which I bought, I paid for such a specified price, and that means my demand has been satisfied. I purchased that car. So if any product, you can say, it's not satisfying these three conditions, it's not demand. So for example, an individual wants to buy, you can say, a mobile phone. He or she don't have the willingness to pay, don't have any ability to pay a specified price for the mobile. He cannot able to pay up. So what is called? It's not demand. So don't be considered a demand. So if you have the desire, natural desire of willingness and ability to pay a specified price for the product, it's called demand. So let's talk about the types of demand and its nature. The first one is consumer demand and producer goods. Consumer in other words, we can call consumer demand consumer goods as well. Consumer goods refers to such products and services which are capable of satisfying the human needs. So they are such goods which satisfy your needs. Like we can talk about the apple, we talk about the mango, we talk about the bread in the summer seasons, we talk about the mangoes, we talk about the, you can say, the blueberries, which always, you can say, increase the immunity of an individual, and that type of goods are called the consumer goods, which always give and direct and immediate satisfaction to an individual. Next one is producer goods. Producer goods are those goods which are used for further processing to further produce the goods and services. For what purpose? To earn the income. So any goods, any type of any goods which earns or you can able to earn income, that's called producer goods. For example, machinery or tractor. For an agriculture farmer, a machinery and tractor is always a source of income for them. So that's called the producer goods, and these goods yield satisfaction indirectly. So which yield satisfaction directly, it's called consumer goods. Which yield satisfaction indirectly, it's called producer goods. Next, we talk about the autonomous demand and drive demand. Autonomous demand. What is autonomous demand? Autonomous demand refers when individual have a natural desire to have a willingness to buy and pay for it. That's called the autonomous demand. For example, specialty hospital can be considered as autonomous. Why? Because uh, that particular individual or a group of individual or organization has been, you can say, a direct demand for goods and services, which ultimately satisfy the services to the people. But when we talk about the drive demand means or refers to relate to a such demand where the individuals use that particular services and accordingly they yield satisfaction. That's called the drive demand. For example, hotels. In a various tourist places, everybody needs, you can say, hotels or the small wood houses, and accordingly they use that services, and that's called the drive demand. So if there is no demand for houses, there are no demand, and there may not be a demand for the steel, cement, and bricks, and so on. So if there is a hotels, that means there is a demand for such things like steel, cements, bricks, and so on, more and more hotels can be, you can say, built up. The third one is durable versus perishable goods. The demand for goods is classified based on their durability. Like, for example, milk, which have a time period. For example, if you talk about the milk have a time period of 2 or 3 days only, and after that, it could be expired. So milk, vegetable, fish, you can say rice, wheat, sugar. So these are perishables. But when we talk about rice, wheat, sugar, which take us some more couple of days, a couple of months, or couple of year, that's called the durable goods. We talk about rice, we talk about the wheat, we talk about the sugar, we talk about the coffee, we talk about the, you can see, the medicines as well. They are all durable goods where such goods couldn't be expired within a days. It takes a long years. That's called the durable goods. Let's talk about the firm demand versus industry demand. Firm demand, we always talk about the single business, a single business unit, or a single firm, where the industry refers a group of firms who carrying a similar activity. So this is a particular tabulation has been given on the screen where the individual demand schedule, we talk about the price and the quantities which has been demanded. Market demand, where the price, where the quantity demanded, which is called, one of the example of bags of rice. If we talk about the individual, we always talk about, I need a rice in kg. It would be 10, 12, 15, 20. But when we talk in the bulk, we talk about the market demand. We talk about irrespective of the prices. So when you buy in bulk, the prices would be the same or it could be reduced. So we talk about the 100, you can say, bags, when there is a demand at the price of 15, 120 at the price of 14. That's called the market demand, which is we talk about in bulk. We talk about the bags of rice. We're not talking about the kg bags. It would be 100 bags, it would be 200 bags in case of market demand. But individual, it's always depends upon the needs of an individual, whether it could be 10, it would be 15, it could be 25, or it could be 30. That is called the individual demand. The next one is short run demand and long run demand. So there is another type is short run demand is always the demand which is an immediate reaction according to the price changes, according to the income fluctuation and so on, which always depends upon the other factors that influence the demand, and that's called the short run demand for a short period. But when we talk about the long run demand, the demand will ultimately exist when there is a changes in pricing, promotional techniques, or any replacement of a product, any improvement of the product, or any development of a product, where the time will take a long, let the market adjust itself to a given situation, which always take a long period of time, and that's called long run demand. So short run demand and long run demand, this is all about where the John Dean has defined such terms. Next, we talk about the new demand and replacement demand. New demand refers when in the market there are new products has been launched, and the demand, and accordingly the demand of such new product has been built up. The replacement demand, the item is purchased. Why the item is purchased? To maintain the asset in a good condition. So if any asset has been purchased or any item is being purchased, why? To maintain such asset in a good condition, so that their life, the asset life, or you can say the, it could get increased according to the period. Next one is total demand and segment market demand. When we talk about the total demand, one of the good example has been given on the screen. Let us take the consumption of a sugar. If we talk about the you can say individual sugar, individual demand or individual consumption of a sugar, and just we add up all the you can say demand of consumption of a sugar in a particular given region, we talk about the total demand. So total demand for sugar in a region is a total market demand. But when we talk about the demand for sugar from a sweet making industry from that same region is a segment market demand. So here we are talking about the one segment, that is sugar, but for where we demanding from an industry that sugar product from the same reason, that's called the segment market demand. So if we talk about the total demand for a sugar in that particular reason, it's total demand. So when we talk about a demand for sugar from a sweet making industry or from an agriculture making industry from the same reason, is a segment market demand. Now we talk about all those factors which affect the demand, which influence the demand. So the first one is the price of a demand. If a particular, you can say, a particular company would increase the demand of a product, of any kind of product, it would be Coca-Cola, it would be Coke, it would be, you can say, milk. So automatically, or you can say coffee, the automatically the demand would get influenced. The demand could get increased or decreased depending upon the type of the product. Let's talk about the income level of the consumer. It automatically, in other words, I could say the positive relationship between the income and the demand of a, you can see the of a consumer. Why? Because if the income increases, so definitely consumer try to consume more and more goods, try to buy the more and more goods, so automatically their demand would get increased. But it always assume that it depends upon the type of the goods, whether it would be consumer goods, whether it would be the durable goods, whether it would be substitute goods, whether it would be the complementary goods. So when we talk about substitute goods and complementary goods, which is always comes in the D point. So substitute goods basically is a goods that serves the main purpose for a same good. That's called the substitute goods. For example, tea and coffee. For example, you can see cupcakes and the cupcakes buns. So that's called the substitute goods, we can say. Complementary goods are those goods which adds a value to another good and used together. For example, ketchup, you can say French fries, right? We talk about the tea and coffee. So that's called complementary gift. If we talk about milk and tea, That's called complementary good. Tea and coffee are the substitute goods, right? So I repeat once again, substitute goods are those goods which you can say which influence a positive influence between the two goods, have a positive relationship between the two goods. But when we talk about complementary goods are those goods which add value to another good for the consumers and used together. For example, milk and tea, French fries and ketchup. That's all complementary goods. But when we talk about the substitute goods, are also those goods that serve the same purpose for another good to a consumers. That's called substitute goods. Substitute goods always shows a positive relationship between two goods which serves the main same purpose. That's called tea and coffee, French fries, and you can see ketchup. And we talk about you can see Coke and Fanta, yeah, Pepsi and Coke are all substitute goods. We talk about the taste and preference of the consumer. The taste and preference keeps of the consumer changes according within a seconds, within a minutes, within an hour. So automatically the demand would get influenced as well. When we talk about the expectations about the prices in future is unpredictable. We always assumed about the future, about the prices of the future, and it keeps on changing. And when the prices will get changed in for the future, we expect to be the price change in future. Demand will definitely influence. It could goes up or down. It could go slower or flatter. When we talk about the expectation about the income in future, we're always based upon assumptions. We always take up predictions about the incomes will get increase or decrease in the future, and accordingly, the demand will also influence for the future. Size of the population is also one of the factor. If the population is more and products are not available and prices get it keeps on increasing and decreasing, automatically demand would get also increase or decrease or changed. Distribution of consumers over different reasons. Definitely, there are various types of consumers, their taste and preference, their income would get changes. So over the different reasons, over the different, you can say urban, rural, or suburban. So definitely, the demand would also get influenced. It's not necessary that in one region the maximum consumers are the middle class. We cannot say that. So automatically, demand would get also influenced depend upon the distribution of consumers. Advertising efforts. That's very true. If an organization invest more in expenses or more money for the advertisement of for their own new products, so it's not necessary the demand would also get increased. So that's why the demand will also influenced according to the money that you invested for the advertising purposes. Any other factors which also been include affecting the demand, for example, technology. So technology is also one of the factor where the demand will also get influenced, and that comes other factors as well. So these are the various factors that influence demand. Let's talk about the demand function. It's very simple. The relation it's if any function which shows a relationship or which describe a relationship between the one variable and its all factors, it's called demand function. So one variable it's demand and its associated factors, and that's called the demand function. So demand is a function of all those factors which influence the demand, and that's called demand function. In other words, it also describes how much the quantity of goods is to be purchased at different prices. what income levels to be at, you can see, you can shown at different alternatives, how the alternate values of other variables affecting the demand, and that's called demand function. So demand function for a good related to the quantity of a goods where the consumers demand for a given period to the factors, to all those factors which influence the demand. And mathematically, the particular equation has been shown on the screen. That is the QD stands for quantity demanded. So quantity demanded is a function of price, income, technology, price of related good, we say substitute and complementary goods. EP, that is the enterprise, that is EI, interest, SP, which has already been shown, advertising affairs, other factors, distribution, population size, all those factors which has been, these are the all factors. So if the quantity demanded is a function of all these factors, it's called demand function. So there are some of these determinants which has been mentioned: price, income, price of substitutes, complementary, taste and preferences. So this is all about the demand function. Let's talk about the next concept is elasticity of demand. So when we talk about elasticity, so elasticity is a magnitude at how the exact demand and the price would get increase or decrease or would get changes. So if you measure the magnitude of how the price and with the respective demand would get increase or decrease, elasticity is a tool. Elasticity is that magnitude which measures the demand and in how frequently, how slowly the particular demand would get increase or decrease, and that's called elasticity. So elasticity is a rate of responding in what ways the demand would get influenced in respective of the various factors which influence the demand. It's called elasticity of demand. So in other words, we can say if any percentage change, if any percentage change in the price which automatically influence the percentage change in its demand, it's called elasticity of demand. In a very simple word, that's a formula. It's called a percentage change in price by percentage change in demand into 100, which is a mathematical formula of the elasticity of demand. And based on the formula, it is very easy to denote into the words. You express the formula into the words and very easily, and that's called elasticity of demand. These are the measurements of elasticity. So these are the five measurements: perfectly elastic demand, perfectly inelastic demand, relatively elastic demand, relatively inelastic demand, and unity demand. So let's focus about these various types, which is a very most important topic of the exams. So when we talk about perfectly elastic demand, so it's from the diagram you can easily understood that price would remains the same, but the quantity demanded keeps on increasing, and that's called perfectly elastic of demand. So if we see the diagram, it's very easy to express in words. So in such way, when any quantity can be sold at a given price, there is no need to reduce the price. The demand, in that case, the demand is called perfectly elastic. So that means, what in other words, we could say that when there is no change in price and the quantity for a good would get increased is called, such demand is called perfectly elastic. Let's talk about the perfectly inelastic demand. So it's very simple. If we talk about the perfectly elastic, the price would remains the same. But when we talk about the perfectly inelastic, the price would get changed and demand would remain constant. So when there is a significant change in the prices, whether it's little or no change, would be the quantity demanded. It's called perfectly inelastic demand. In other words, we could say the demand is called to be perfectly inelastic when there is no change in the quantity demanded, even through there is a change in their prices, whether increase or decrease. That's called the perfectly inelastic demand. Let's talk about the relatively elastic demand. So, if we talk about the relatively elastic demand, it means there is an inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demand for a particular product. And that's the main reason when there is an inverse relationship, it's called the relatively elastic demands. You can see in the diagram if the price goes down and the demand for a particular good could get increased. The shape of the demand it's called relatively elastic demand, and this is a way to show up the shape of the relatively elastic demand. So when there is an inverse, there is a relatively elastic demand. So in other words, we could say the demand is said to be relatively elastic when there is a change in demand is more than the change in price. So you can see in the diagram as well that how the shape of demand is said to be relatively elastic when there is a gap between the price and the demand. It's automatically large. So if there is a change in price is low, then the change in demand it's relatively elastic. In other words, we could say if there is a change in demand is more than the change in price is also called the relatively elastic. Next one is relatively inelastic. So if we talk about elastic, what's the meaning of that elastic? That change in demand is more than the change in price. If you see in the diagram, but relatively inelastic, that what is the? It's a reverse case. Inelastic, the change in price is more than the change in quantity demanded of a product or the change in demand. In other words, we could say the change in demand is less than the change in price. It's also called relatively inelastic demand. Any, you can say, whatever the words you use, the meaning should be the same. If the meaning should same, it's called inelastic. I would define in a very simple manner, right? If a change in price is more than the change in demand, then also it's called relatively inelastic. If the change in demand is less than the change in price, is also called relatively inelastic demand. So both meaning is the same. So and that's called the demand is said to be relatively inelastic. Next one is unity elastic. In other words, we could say unit elasticity of demand. The elasticity in demand is said to be unity, which is equal to 1 when the change in demand is equal to change in price. So if you see the diagram, the unit elastic, the demand, change in demand is equal to the change in price. So when the change in demand, that is delta D, is equal to delta P, is unit elastic of demand. The demand is said to be unity elastic or unit elastic. That's called unity elastics. So when there is equal of change in demand and change in price, we call elasticity. Or in other words, we could say this demand is said to be unit elastic. These are the main types of elasticities of elasticity of demand, the price elasticity of demand, the income elasticity of demand, the gross elasticity of demand, and advertising elasticity of demand. So it is very simple to understand. So what is price elasticity of demand? Here we are talking about the one of the factor of demand which influence the demand. That's called price elasticity of demand. So if there is a change in price which ultimately influence the change in demand, that's called price elasticity of demand. Income elasticity of demand means that income is one of the factor of the demand which influence the directly to the demand. It means if there is a change in income, definitely it would also influence the demand, that is change in demand. So when there is some change in income and automatically it would get change in the demand. It's called income elasticity of demand. It would goes up, it would goes down. In case of price also, price and demand. If the price goes up, demand would get also down. The third concept is cross elasticity of demand. Cross, we always talk about the substitute and complementary good. There is a cross elasticity. When we talk about substitute, there is a positive relationship between the two goods. When we, for example, Coca-Cola and Coke, Fanta or Limca, we talk about tea and coffee, which is the most common examples of the substitute good when we talk about tea and coffee. But you can turn up to the another examples. Tea and coffee. Instead of using tea and coffee, you can use the uh, soft drinks. You can use the cocktail drinks. So that's called the substitute goods. But when we talk about the complementary goods in case of cross elasticity, we always talk about the negative relationship between the two goods. That means we talk about the French fries in cappuccino. So that is called the negative relationship. When we talk about advertising elasticity of demand, we always talk about the advertising cost and its associate demand. So in the next session, we're going to come up with a detailed explanation with the numerical questions, with the numerical mathematical formulas will be used in measuring such elasticity. So we'll come up in the next session to discuss in detail. So for today, thank you so much and namaste to all.